Greetings, everybody. I'm Scott Waddell here at the Great River Taoist Center, which is home to our Academy of Chinese Swordsmanship. Today, I'm also joined by my good friend Ian Alexander from the Mushu Shinden Ryo. What we're going to do in this episode, or this series that we're going to present for you, is take a look at when the tiger meets the dragon, Imjin War Duels. And what we're doing is this sort of what if. I mean, pretty much everybody who does swordsmanship of one kind or another, any kind of historical swordsmanship, gets into these discussions or thinks about what would have happened should, a guy from this place happened to run in from somebody from there. What would have happened if Chinese Jianke had a duel with a Japanese samurai? The thing is, of course, this actually happened when Hideyoshi sent his daimyo to invade Korea. China, of course, responded, helping their ally, Korea. Of course, the Koreans also fought valiantly. We want to look at how these two different types of swordsmanship, what happened when they interacted. And what we're going to do for you is present 3 choreographed fight scenes. And, spoiler alert, this series is being sponsored by School of Chinese Swordsmanship, so the Chinese Jianke prevails. We expected people, a lot of different comments about that. We're happy to hear what you have to say. So please feel free to comment as much as you like below. But we're also going to say that these choreographed bouts, or really think of them as duels, or what happened should we accidentally have met, are based on our pressure testing each other. These are not based on a fantasy or what we think might have happened. They're based 100% on what happened when we bowed at each other and really tested each other and pushed each other and see what worked and what didn't work. So we took the bits from those bouts, friendly bouts, pretty friendly bouts, put them together to create these 3 duels for you. Before we get into those duels, before I present them for you, we're also going to look at the weapons of the period. Ian will, of course, present the Japanese weapons. I'll present the weapons of the Ming Dynasty, the ones that would have been carried by the army when they came to Korea's aid. Ian, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so from the paintings and antiques of the period, we know that the Japanese did in fact use the two-handed sword. This is great as my Ryuha, along with many others in Japan, practiced two-handed swordsmanship in an unbroken lineage. From this, we can surmise that what we will be presenting likely occurred during the Imjin Wars.
Right, so that's again another thing we want to do is historically accurate as much as we can. One thing that's not quite historically accurate is Ian is much bigger than Japanese of the period, of course, playing the part of the Chinese Jianke during the late Ming Dynasty when Imjin Wars occurred. Pretty much most soldiers would have carried Dao, single-handed Dao. There was also some two-handed Dao in use, but for the most part, largely single-handed Dao. But officers, those probably potentially with more training in swordsmanship, would have still wielded Jian. So before we jump in, and Ian presents the Japanese weapons for you, and I'll present the Chinese, let's have just a brief overview of the Imjin War. Perhaps not everybody is familiar with the period. And of course, what we'll do is just going to give you a brief look at it to set the stage, if you will. But also then I'm going to put some links below to some really useful videos and books and things if you'd like to delve deeper into the period. So let's take a look at the Imjin War.
The not one, but 2 Imjin Wars were a dark period in the region's history. Korea had been at peace for 200 years when Japan, without provocation, brutally attacked, invading the peninsula, slaughtering innocents, and wantonly destroying town after town. It began just 1 year after Hideyoshi unified Japan. Hideyoshi's unification of Japan led to thousands of samurai being unemployed. He planned the invasion to keep these battle-hardened men occupied. He planned to invade China and wanted the Joseon dynasty to allow his force to march across Korea into China. A vassal state of China, the Koreans refused. In April 1592, the first invasion force of several thousand landed, taking Busan. By May, they occupied most of Zhongshan province. The Korean army counterattacked in June with 100,000 men. But despite their relatively advanced artillery, the more experienced Japanese soundly defeated them at the Battle of Junju. This loss opened the door for the Japanese to march north, capturing Hongsan, modern-day Seoul. With the Korean king in flight, the samurai army marched both east and north, where they took Pyongyang after another failed effort by the Koreans. Fortunately, in June, Yi Sun-shin took command of the Korean Navy. Though the Korean fleet had been largely destroyed during the initial days of the invasion, Yi set about rebuilding and revolutionizing the Navy, introducing turtle ships. These ships had cannons that could fire in any direction, a great many oars for speed, and could produce smoke screens. Though few in number, these ships were superior to those of the Japanese, helping them win numerous battles. At the Battle of Aro, the Japanese lost 30 of 50 ships. At Hansen Island, they lost 101. And at Busan, the Japanese lost 92. These losses meant Hideyoshi couldn't supply his forces by sea, forcing them to transfer supplies overland from Busan. By this time, tens of thousands of Koreans had joined volunteer guerrilla armies. The strongest of these operated from Jeolla province, which was still not under Japanese control. While harassing Japanese supply lines, they managed to retake towns, even marching on Hansong, forcing the invading samurai on the defensive. The one daimyo managed to advance north, even capturing 2 Korean princes. Finally, in September of 1592, the Ming Wanli Emperor decided, after a small force he sent had been crushed, to send his men in. By January, a 40,000-man Chinese army under command of Li Rusong marched into northern Korea to the aid of their vassal, Korea. In a few weeks, they recaptured Pyongyang and Kaesong. The Chinese drove south, pushing the samurai army from half of the peninsula. Their march south was halted at the Battle of Beijuan, and a stalemate developed, with both sides suffering heavily. In the spring of 1593, Hideyoshi's daimyo army ran out of supplies, and as the Ming threatened to send in an army of 400,000, the Japanese pulled back to Busan, entering peace negotiations. Unfortunately, representatives on both sides lied to their leaders. Hideyoshi was led to believe the Chinese were suing for peace, whereas the Wanli Emperor was under the impression that Japan would become a vassal state. With no agreement, Hideyoshi, unwilling to accept surrender, launched a second invasion with 140,000 men in 1597. Initially successful, mostly due to the fact that Admiral Yi had been arrested, the samurai again captured Busan, marching west aiming to take Jeolla province. Fortunately, Yi was put back in command of the Navy, and he put an end to the invaders' supplies arriving from Japan. The Chinese were likewise quick to again send troops to Korea. The Koreans had also spent the intervening years reforming their army and command structure. In September, they pushed back the samurai assault on Hongsen, but the Japanese managed to hold on to the southern territory for another year. Late in 1598, the Koreans and Chinese launched a major offensive against the Japanese positions along the southern coast. This offensive coincided with the death of Hideyoshi, and so the Japanese armies finally began to retreat, withdrawing from Korea. By December, the war was over. Hundreds of thousands died during the 2 invasions, destroying much of Korea's infrastructure. In Japan, Hideyoshi's clan ended up ousted from power, with the Tokugawa shogunate replacing him.